Today on episode 185 of the Peak Performance Leadership Podcast, we speak to return guest Peter Economy, and he's going to tell you how you can deal with those difficult coworkers, annoying managers, and toxic leaders. That's right, it's all about dealing with jerks today. Are you ready for this? All right, let's do it. Welcome one, welcome all to the Peak Performance Leadership Podcast, a weekly podcast series dedicated to helping you hit peak performance across the three domains of leadership. Those being leading yourself, leading your team, and leading your organization. This podcast couples my 20 years of military experience as a senior Canadian Army officer with world-class guests to bring you the most complete podcast of leadership going. And for more, feel free to check out our website at movingforwardleadership.com. And with that, let's get to the show. Yes, thank you for coming out. It's so great to have you here. You again, here at the Peak Performance Leadership Podcast, where we get amazing guests like Peter, the leadership guy, Economy, for the second time. But before we dive into today's episode and we dive into who Peter is, I got a quick announcement for you, and that is the soft announcement, I guess I would say, of the coming mastermind. That's right. The Leader Growth Mastermind is coming, and I'm super excited. We're looking at launching the first group through this program in October, and what you're going to get out of it is going to be 8 weeks in duration. We're going to do a deep dive in the three domains of leadership for a couple weeks each. We're going to set some goals. We're going to hold each other accountable. We are going to meet online, face-to-face, and you are going to be able to interact with the other leaders in the group so that you can, ask those questions, seek some input, provide some input, help others, and it is going to be an amazing experience. So if you're interested in the Leader Growth Mastermind, then simply go to movingforwardleadership.com/leader growth. And what you're going to do, and that's leader growth hyphenated, leader growth. And what you're going to do is sign up for the mailing list there. And that is going to enable you to be one of the first ones to be able to sign up for this session. Now, seats are going to be limited for this session for the Leader Growth Mastermind. So you definitely want to make sure you sign up to that, to make sure you can sign up right away to the actual mastermind. Again, that's movingforwardleadership.com/leader growth. And I can't wait to meet with you face to face in there. It's going to be so amazing. All right, let's talk about a topic that no doubt many of you have experienced in the past, and that is dealing with jerks. Whether that's a toxic team member who basically sucks the life out of everyone, that difficult coworker that just makes the office feel like it's filled with mayhem and drama, or the boss who says, you know what, I have all the credit here, and basically makes you feel like telling them, take this job and shove it, yo. I do not have time for this. Well, to combat this, we have brought in Peter Economy. Peter, the leadership guy Economy, is the best-selling author of Managing for Dummies, which has over 600,000 copies sold globally. He's also Wait, I'm the Boss, and he, as I said, he's the leadership guy over at Inc.com. So Peter is well-versed, well-known, and well-respected. In this episode today, we talk about the amount of drain jerks can have on the workplace, the impacts of different types of jerks throughout the workplace, such as the credit thief, why micromanaging is so destructive, how to find, hire, and retain talented workers so you don't have to deal with jerks, how to find out if you, the leader, or if you're a jerk or not, and then finally, how to confront them in a professional and positive way. Peter's an outstanding guest who, love to have him on the show more times than not, and you're going to get a lot out of him. So, you know what? With that being said, I think that's enough for the intro today. So, why don't you sit back, relax, and enjoy my interview with dealing with difficult coworkers, annoying managers, and toxic leaders with Peter, the leadership guy, economy. Peter, welcome back to the show. It's so amazing to have you here, sir.
Thanks, Scott. It's great to be back. I love it.
Yeah. We had you back, or we originally had you on episode 117. So for listeners out there, you can check it out, movingforwardleadership.com/117 with Wait, I'm the Boss, the leadership guy, Peter Economy. And that was literally over a year ago. So welcome back to the show.
Thanks. Yeah, lots happened in the last year, I think.
One or two things I think may have happened. But let's talk about what we're talking about, what we're here to talk about today. And that is, wait, I'm working with who? Who am I working with? Let's dive in. So, we're talking about difficult coworkers, annoying managers, toxic leaders, personalities, and all that. It's awesome. And, as I was saying, a bit of a timely topic for myself. So let's get into the nitty gritty of, how bad and how much of a drain these types of personalities can have on your organization out there.
Yeah, the fundamental problem is that there's a lot of jerks in the workplace. And I don't know, maybe even more so than ever, even, with this past year of COVID, everybody going through all these problems we've had, I think people are more strained, more stressed than ever before. And that causes, relationships to break down, relationships to be strained. People get shorter with each other, maybe less respectful of one another. So, there's been all kinds of research done about toxic workplaces. And they've done surveys of employees and found that about 2/3 of employees report that they've worked in a toxic workplace at least once. And that 1/4 of those people report working in more than one toxic workplace during the course of their careers. So there's a lot of toxic workplaces out there. There's a lot of toxic coworkers and people out there. So it's pretty bad.
Oh, it is bad. And I can tell you from experience, the negative impact a toxic leader can have in an organization. I went from an organization that was thriving, that was innovating, that was moving in the right direction. The leadership changed, and all of a sudden we went Mach 9 nosedive straight through the ground. Right? Like a complete 180. So it is out there. It has a lot of negative impacts and, a lot of negative effects out there. Now you have a handful of different, personality types that you like to go over when it comes to these type of personalities. So why don't we, go through the Coles Notes versions of what they are and what they bring or not bring to the workplace.
Yeah. So in the book that I wrote, I highlight 16 different most common jerks at work. And rather than go through, all 16 of them here and taking up 3 hours of your listeners' time, there's a few of them that I personally are my personal favorites and people that I've experienced in my own career. And I'm sure everybody has, because these are just such common things. One of my favorites is the credit thief. And often that's a boss. You do a lot of work, you work really hard on a project. You go to a meeting, maybe a meeting of the management team or something like that, and you make a presentation about, your thing, and then your boss takes the credit. The boss says, you know what, that was my idea. It was really awesome. Thanks to Joe there for pitching in on it, but, it was basically my thing. And there's credit thieves all over the place. They just love to steal credit, put the spotlight on themselves instead of on you, instead of the person who actually did the work. So that's a real common one. I see that all the time.
Yeah, and not only have I seen it, I've been on the unfortunate end of it, where I did a lot of work, and not only did my boss take credit, but was like recognized for that work, and I kind of stood there and scratched my head and go, but, oh well. Now, yeah, credit thieves, they're out there and stuff like this. What kind of real negative impact are we going to see from credit thieves on an organization? What are some of those negative impacts out there?
Yeah. So for a credit thief, when someone keeps taking other people's credit, I think the thing that goes through that person's mind whose credit is being stolen from them is, why should I bother? Why should I work so hard and achieve this goal when someone else is going to get the benefit? Someone else is going to get the award. Someone else is going to get the stock options. Someone else is going to get the bonus or the trip to the Bahamas or whatever it might be. So why should I bother? And then after a while of going through that, it's like, well, maybe I should go work someplace where I'll get credit. So one of the worst things that happens as a result of toxic behavior in a workplace is that people start looking for a job elsewhere. If a manager doesn't do something to get rid of this toxic situation, whatever it may be, including themselves, employees are going to start looking around for another job. And I don't know, right now it's the job market's gotten pretty tough for employers to find people to work. And you can't afford to let people go, especially really good people. You just can't, you never can afford to let good people go, but especially now. You need your great people more than ever before. And so when people take credit, when people don't shine the spotlight on the people who are doing the work, A, they're going to be disengaged, and B, they're eventually just going to go somewhere else where they might get the spotlight shined on them.
So for the leaders out there that are watching, listening, and they're like, do I have a credit thief that's working for me? What are some of the ways that they can identify that potentially one of their subordinates is being a credit thief of their subordinate?
Right. So I think you see it pretty obviously, again, in these meetings or reports. So your person writes a report about something that they quote unquote achieved, and they don't talk about their team at all, or they make a presentation to you or to a management team, and they don't bring the team in. They just bring themselves in, and they, again, the spotlight is on them. So my question as a manager of that person would be like, well, did you get any help from anybody else? Didn't your coworkers help you? If so, tell me more about that, and try to identify who else was involved besides that one person, because it becomes pretty obvious when that person is trying to shine the spotlight on them to the exclusion of other people. And the whole point is, trying to identify that, and then shining the spotlight more broadly across the entire team.
Yeah, absolutely. When it's all about me, that is always a red flag for me for my subordinate leaders, the ones that are in charge of people as well. And one other thing that I use as a red flag indicator is when they don't know the nitty gritty details. When you're asking these questions and you're like, and you can tell they're dancing, or suddenly they're like, oh, I'll get back to you on that. Like, wait, now, you did this work. You should know these types of details. Why am I waiting longer? Like, then you start going,
That's a great point, because yeah, if they did the work, they should know the details. And if they're tap dancing around the details, and they don't have them at their beck and call, then for sure there's a disconnect, and you can pretty well guess that it's because they didn't do the work. Someone else was doing the work behind the scenes.
awesome. All right, so credit thief. Let's take credit and knock them out and say they're done. What else? What other kind of jerks out there that really stick out in your mind that the leaders out there should be aware of moving forward?
Yeah, well, another one in my mind that's pretty popular out there is the micromanager. So, this is a manager who we've all had, and we've all had a boss who just wants to control everything we do. And in fact, they often will just step in and tell us exactly what to do. And that is just so bad. We talked about the other book, Wait, I'm the Boss. And, one of the things that the research shows is that our bosses, bad bosses, are the number one reason why people leave a job. I mean, it's just by far people leave work because of their boss. And when a micromanager just manages every little detail of what you do, again, the tendency is to want to disengage. The tendency is to say, okay, fine, you do it. You go ahead and do it. I'm just going to step back and watch you do your thing. And if you don't feel like you're challenged at work, if you don't feel like you're actually doing the work, if you feel like your boss is just going to control every single thing you're going to do, again, I think one of the reactions is to start looking for somewhere else to work. I want to find a place where I have authority, I have autonomy, I'm trusted to do the work, and I'm given the ability to do it. So again, that's another negative in the workplace.
Oh God, preach to me. I There's nothing that this guy doesn't hate more than being micromanaged. It's like suffocating. Give me your outline, give me your guidance, tell me some restrictions, whatever, but then get the heck out of my way and let me do my job. I will come back to you when I need answers, when I need a little bit more guidance or DNG or something. I don't have a resource which I think I need you to get for me.
Yeah, exactly. And what is it called? The commander's intent. There's some phrase, where basically you tell a person what the goal is. We're going to get to the top of that hill. That's the goal. That's what we're going to do. And then you let your employees figure out how to get there. Obviously help them if they need support, if they need some hints, if they need some advice, but let them figure it out. Give them the authority, the autonomy to get there to the top of the hill themselves.
Absolutely. So yeah, commander's intent is something that we use in the army. Me still serving in the Canadian Army, where we outline, this is what I want to achieve, and then later is like, okay, this is your part of how we're going to achieve it, and these are the resources you have. These are the tasks that I need you to do, and then it's like, hey, you come back and tell me your plan of how you're going to achieve those tasks that I set up for you to achieve, and you can still do that in business world. And another part of the commander's intent is something that we call mission command, i.e., again, telling intent, allowing resources, and then giving them autonomy over work to figure out how to achieve that mission and not getting into the nitty-gritty details. Because at the end of the day, we hire people for their skill sets because they're smarter than us. They're smarter than us in marketing. They're smarter than us in R&D. They're smarter than us in sales or, social media or whatever. Us as leaders, we are kind of like the general contractors. It's like, I got a little bit, I'm dangerous in all the areas, but you guys are the experts. But here's the vision. This is what I want built. Let me know what you need from me for us to go and build that.
Yeah, and what you just said really reminds me a lot of the importance of recruiting and hiring the very best people. People who are smarter than you. You said that. People are smarter than you in social media. People are smarter than you in accounting. People are smarter than you in all these different functions of your organization, whatever it may be, marketing, sales, whatever it might be. Because as a manager, I'm not the expert in any of those single, maybe one of them. Maybe I was originally brought up as an accountant or something, and then the CFO or something. And that was sort of my main thing. But now I'm over a much larger organization that includes other functions. It's so critically important to hire really great people and then retain them and not have a toxic workplace that runs them out of there where they're looking for another job.
No, for sure. Now, you do even mention about recruiting and hiring in your book there. So this feels like a good segue to dive into that portion just because you brought it up. So from your standpoint, what are some of the best ways out there to find, recruit, hire, and then retain some people that aren't going to be jerks within your organization?
Yeah, well, recruiting process is just, I think, throwing the net widely. So you really want to go out and find the broadest group, a diverse group of people, without preconceived notions as to what that group might be or look like or sound like or anything else. And often that includes, tapping your own organization, your employees, asking them who would they recommend. Do they have friends, family, colleagues, customers? Could be anybody that they recommend. And again, this ties into the toxic workplace, because one of the things you lose when you're recruiting people, you lose that internal recruiting tool. If you've got a toxic workplace, all of a sudden your employees are saying, I'm not going to recommend my friends come here. I'm not going to bring in somebody into this place. I'm not going to tell my customer they ought to get a job here. They're going to say, stay away, don't even bother. So you want to cast the net widely. You want to tap your internal employees, asking them who they would recommend. I think that's a really great way to find people. And then take the time to really interview them. So, get your list of people, narrow it down to a reasonable number of people, and then really take the time to get to know them through the interview process. I think that a lot of people interview too quickly, or they just have one interview with the boss, or maybe one or two interviews with the boss and somebody else. But some of the most effective things I've seen as far as interviews go is really a team type interview where you put people through multiple interviews over the course of a week or maybe even a couple of weeks with multiple people throughout the organization that they may interact with, and some people they may never interact with. But just really having people get their impressions of this candidate. Again, a diverse group of people from throughout the organization, on your team and outside your team, who may or may not work with these people. And then, really take the time to make that final judgment. Go out, look, and make sure you do due diligence on that person, particularly in social media nowadays. I mean, it's always been hard to get references from former employers. I mean, I know that when I was a manager, we were very reticent to give out references because you were afraid that you'd get legal action if you said something wrong. If you insulted someone or said something bad about someone, the fear is that you might get sued. But I think people are very aware of going out, looking at social media now, looking through their social media, seeing what kind of person they really are. Are they really the kind of person they say they are? And do take that time to make the final decision as far as who you're going to hire. And then once that person comes on board, make sure you take the time to onboard them properly. Don't just put them at a desk and say, okay, get to work. I've seen that happen. My wife went through that with her job. She was basically sat at her desk, and the person whose job she took disappeared. She had taken another position in this organization and never helped her at all. So she had to literally learn from scratch her job. You need to properly onboard people once you have them inside the door.
Wow, there's so many great things in there. Geez, I don't even know where to start to touch. But one thing, okay, the first thing that stands in my mind is you checking to see if coworkers have people that they could recommend. And I think that's a great litmus test. A great litmus test of, what is the feel of your organization? If suddenly people go, no, 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 well then, no, I don't know anyone. No, I don't know anyone. Well, it's a basic job. Like anyone could do this job. You don't know anyone who would like to work here. And then as a leader, you should kind of scratch your head and go, wait now, what's going on here? What's actually up? Because if you wouldn't recommend to work at your company to your friends, then what does that say to the company? So that's a great point.
Yeah, thanks. It really, if you're not getting that stream of candidates, which I think most organizations do, then yeah, that's definitely something's wrong. You should check into that.
Yeah, for sure. And then the second thing I like to hit on was putting people through a more rigorous interview process and having them go through, multiple layers. So I had the CEO of Echelon Front Overwatch, Mike Sorelli, and as well as partner George Randall on the show not too long ago. And they're the co-authors of Talent War. So going out and finding talented people and bringing them into your company and keeping them there. And they refer to that as a gated approach. So candidates go through a gate. They're successful to get through the gate. They're not successful, they don't get through the gate. And having multiple gates through to the final stage of, okay, we now essentially have eliminated all the candidates. And now we're down to the last one potentially, or just a couple, right, through this process. And it makes a lot of sense. I remember when I applied to go to with a specific organization. And I went through those gates. I went through testing. I went through multiple interviews. I went through all this stuff, and I kept going, and then finally got told, thanks, but unfortunately, no thanks. So it sucked, but it is what it is. But still, that is how that the organizations kind of protect themselves in ensuring that they are getting the right candidate for the bill. Because I feel like out there right now at this day and age, a lot of companies are like, we just need someone. We just need someone to sit in a chair and do the job. Well, no, you don't.
Yeah, you definitely don't need the wrong person in that chair, because the trouble is you may not be able to get rid of them anytime soon. I mean, usually those bad hires, you don't figure it out for at least a few months, and so they're going to be there potentially poisoning the well for 3 to 6 months before you actually get rid of them again.
No, for sure. Now, I want to change gears a little bit. And, we talked about leading your teams, and we talked about hiring, and we talked about talent management and stuff like this. Now, what I'd like to go into is your concept of, how not to be a jerk ourselves as leaders. So the first question, and I think we've hit on a few of these points, but I'm sure you're going to really reemphasize them. How do we know whether or not we're a jerk? Because, it could be a huge blind spot for me as the leader. So how would I know, or how would I go to figure out?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think a lot of us are blind to our own behavior and the impact that our behavior has. I think it's a natural thing. I think it's, especially highly driven type A people who are not really that sensitive to the people around them. They're just seeing the goals and trying to achieve the goals and get the awards and get the, everything else, make their customers happy, which is important. But they don't see what's going on in the wake that they leave behind them. So I think that one of the most important things is to actually seek feedback from the people around you. And I know, there's these 180 degree or 360s, I guess 360 degree assessments that all kinds of consulting firms have, where you can get assessments done, going out to your reports, your direct reports, the reports of your direct reports, going out in the organization and getting that feedback. And either anonymously or not anonymously. But I think for many managers, for many people, you have to actually do an actual outreach. You can do it casually. You can say, walking down the hall, hey, what do you think about how I'm managing this group? But the trouble is that people, when you just you just ask them one-on-one, face-to-face, a lot of people will just tell you what they think you want to hear. They don't want to hurt your feelings. They don't want to insult you. They don't want to say, you were a total jerk in that meeting. God, what were you thinking? People don't tend to want to, some people will. I mean, there's always going to be someone who's willing to put it out there, but most people, I think, will hang back. So I think the best thing any manager, anybody can do that wants to get a real assessment on whether they're a jerk or not is to get those 360 degree reviews. And if you want to make them anonymous, that might get you better feedback. But however you do it, however your HR department, however you think it can be best done, however the company that you work with to get that feedback says you should do that, you should. And then, once you get that feedback, you've actually got to take it seriously. I think, a lot of managers, a lot of people in business will get the feedback and they'll either discount it. They'll say, I'm not that person. That's not who I am. They must have caught that guy on a bad day or something, or that person just making it up. That's just not true. That's just not me. Or they'll just forget about it. They just sort of file it away and not change their behavior at all. So, you've got to take this feedback seriously and want to change, make those changes in your behavior to make things better. And if you're not willing to do that, then you're just going to continue to be a jerk. And again, you're going to leave that wake behind you that eventually gets people disengaged, eventually has people looking for another job. And that's just not where you want to be.
Wow. So I thought I said that I thought we hit on a few points, but you totally took me on a right turn that I wasn't expecting.
Ah,
Beautiful though. Beautiful. And it makes all it makes a world of sense. But what I'm really hearing from you, I think it all starts with humility, right? Being humble enough, one, to ask the question, i.e., the 360, because that's what you're doing. You're asking the question of, how am I doing? What do you think of me? And be honest and open. And don't worry, there can't be any repercussions because this is anonymous. And then two, being humble enough to go, wow, I really am a stinking boss, aren't I? And then the follow on is, okay, how do I change? What is the steps? Like, wow. And I think, and often people will get, analysis paralysis, or they'll just, kind of, hit them in the face, and they're like, oh my God, I have these problems. What do I do now? So what does the leader out there who, has listened to this show, has eaten their humble pie, has done the 360 with their subordinates, have gotten horrible results, and then they start clicking and going, wow, that's why our turnover sucks. Wow, that's why, we have a backstabbing culture going on here that I'm aware of now. We have this problem and that problem. Holy crap, it's all because of me. What's the next step for them?
well, the next step is to really set a goal to change your behavior. You've got to change. It's all about change, and you've got to set a goal to change that behavior. So if that means listening more. So for example, let's say in staff meetings with my team, I'm going to quit talking so much. I'm not going to talk 95% of the meeting. I'm going to talk 5% of the meeting. Let's just say, that's an extreme example, but let's just say 5%. I'm going to listen 95%, you know? So changing your listening behavior in your meetings. And that's it. It's setting these goals. So that could be one goal, changing from talking all the time to listening all the time in staff meetings. It could be delegating more. It could be saying, I'm going to delegate more and I'm going to micromanage less. So in the next 5 projects, you could do it almost like an OKR, one of these objectives and key results. The next 5 projects I have that I assign to people, I'm going to micromanage half as much as I typically do, something like that. I'm just going to let them run with it far more than I currently do. And then assess if you've actually achieved the goals. You could do it as an actual, goal. Did I achieve the goal? If not, what do I need to do to do better next time? And hold yourself accountable, hold yourself accountable, follow through with that, with those goals. And I think, we often talk about in the books that I write and the people I work with about setting small goals, small little goals. It doesn't have to be a huge thing like I'm going to change everything I do overnight. That's a recipe for failure. Change one little thing. There's that guy who did the book Tiny Habits, I think it's called. And he said, if you want to change how you floss your teeth, and I want to start flossing my teeth regularly, well, start with just the tiny habit of flossing one tooth once a day, and then do that for a few days or a week. Then at the end of that week, add an additional tooth, floss 2 teeth, once a day, that kind of thing. You do it in small bites, tiny habits. You don't try to do it all at once.
So many great points in there. And I'm going to add on, and I'm going to give myself a shameless plug, but I'm going to give you a plug too, Peter. And I think this is a great time for bringing in outside help, coaches like ourselves, to do those things that you talked about, i.e., helping the leaders set those goals and going and like, you're going for Everett's. Do you want to try hiking, the small hill first? before we go for Mount Everest. Let's break this down a little bit further, and doing the accountability and helping them see past, see the forest for the trees, or the trees for the forest, whatever that saying is. But regardless, the point of the matter is helping them to see where their faults are, outlining a plan for them to get from where they are today, where they want to be tomorrow, and then holding them accountable to those steps to make sure you get there. And when I say holding accountable, I mean holding accountable in a good way, i.e., the motivating way, the way that when someone wakes up, you go, I got to do this, or Scott's gonna be on my butt. And I'm a bit relentless and ruthless sometimes when I'm holding people accountable, again, in a good way. But one of my former clients, he referred to as being SM. He's like being Scott McCarthy. He's like, I'm getting SM today, Aaron. I'm like, well, you tell me. You already know.
Ouch. Yeah. So I think that's a great point that, coaching, having a coach, and whether that person is an outside coach, which often is the case, and especially, I'm sure, as you know, Scott, a lot of the people that are probably brought in as coaches, outside coaches, are brought in because the manager's manager says, you need help. You're a great manager. You're performing, you're hitting the numbers in a lot of different ways, but your employees can't work with you. They're having a hard time working with you. We want to keep you. We want you to improve. So we're going to bring in a coach. We're going to bring somebody in from the outside to help you out. Or it could be an internal coach. It could be a mentor. It could be somebody who's internal to you, who's more senior, who's got more experience, that sees what the problems are and helps you see them too. And then put you on a plan, like you said, help you develop your own plan. But wherever you get a coach from, inside or outside, coaches are a great asset to have for any manager.
Absolutely. And you're fully right. Like, there's a lot of great coaches from internal your organization for sure. But, sometimes organizations are either one, too busy, or two, not to that size yet where they can afford to allow someone to, that time. That's where great people like yourself and myself come in. Peter, I want to hit on one last, topic area before we wind down here, being cognizant of the time. And that is, sometimes us as leaders, we feel stuck. We're in between, our boss, and then we're in between that person and our subordinates. And sometimes, that boss is the jerk. What advice do you have out there for the leader who, feels trapped, is, being, oppressed, getting credit stolen from them, getting all these, horrible things done to them, like you've written in your great book, by the way, but has the moral courage to say, step up and go, boss, this isn't right. This needs to change, or my people are going to walk, and I'm probably going to be with them at a certain point because we just don't like it here anymore.
Yeah, I mean, that takes a lot of courage, but that's really the way to do it. I mean, that's what I recommend, is that even if it's your boss, and maybe especially if it's your boss, they may not be aware. I don't think most people who are toxic at work, most people who are jerks at work, bosses of bosses, I don't think they're intentional about it. I don't think they intentionally want to be a jerk. I don't think they're intentionally being toxic. Some people are. Some people are that's just part of who they are. But I don't think most people are. I think most people have good intent, and that should be the assumption. So by bringing this to your boss's attention, this might actually be helpful. They may consider this a blessing that you've actually pointed this out. And if you can show data, if you can show the impact it's having on your people, on your team, on your organization, I've got people complaining. I've got people who they're coming in late to work because they just don't want to come into work. They're not as engaged in their jobs as they should be. They're not recommending other people to come to work for us. All these negative implications. Then if you can show data and bring this to your boss, and as a friend, as a colleague, not as an adversary, as an enemy, you're trying to help them, you're trying to help the organization. There's every reason to do that, and to have the courage to do that.
I love it. I especially love that last bit of, the theme of caring. I care about you. I care about this company. I care about this organization. I want it to succeed, but we are not going to work, i.e. succeed, if this continues the way it is. And I remember when I was young. I mean, like second year fresh out of military college. And, my supervisor was a jerk, he did something one Friday and I was livid. He said some words publicly that shouldn't have been. Anyway, there's a bit of backstory to it. Irrelevant. The moral story was this: he said stuff publicly that shouldn't have been said publicly about me, and I was fuming over it all weekend. And then Monday morning came, I walked in, I said, "Sir, we need to talk." And a lieutenant to a major, this is a huge rank difference at that time. And he's like, "Okay." And I shut the door. I said, "We need to really talk." And I explained to him, I said, "This is what you did. This is how I felt about it. This is how I did not appreciate it." And in the end, he said, "Wow, okay, yeah, thanks. That won't happen again." But I tell you, I was on pins and needles walking through that door. I was like,
That's great. No, it takes courage. It takes courage, and that's one of the best things that anybody can do in on the job is to have the courage to not confront, but to help, to have that compassion for other people you work with, to build those connections and to make them stronger.
But that's the role as us as leaders, because we need that courage. Because without it, you got to do the right thing. You got to do the right thing as a leader for yourself, for your team, for your organization. Because if you don't do it, then who is?
Exactly.
Peter, my friend, I could talk all day, all night with you, sir, but I will be respectful of your time. So we're going to wind down here. But before we wrap up, a couple last questions, if you remember. The first being, according to you, Peter Economy, what makes a great leader?
Great leaders are people who have true compassion for the people they work with, the customers, and the other communities in which they do business.
Beautiful. I'm going to go back to 117 and double check to see your answer there. And then the final question of the show: how can people follow you? How can they find you? Where can they buy the book? It's all about you now.
Yeah, the best place to go is petereconomy.com. I've got on my splash page there, I've got a link to my book. There's a copy of the book right there. You click it and you go and buy a copy anytime you want, 24/7. Yes. Wait, I'm working with who?
Awesome. And always, for you, the listener, it's easy. Just go to movingforwardleadership.com/185 for when this goes live. For the people who are listening/watching real time on the various socials that this is being live streamed, that site won't be live right now, but you can still check out petereconomy.com or drop me a line and I'll throw the link there for you. Sir, Peter, my friend, it's been an honor. It's been a pleasure yet again to have you on the show.
Thanks so much, Scott. It was great to be back.
And that's a wrap for this episode, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting the Peak Performance Leadership Podcast. But you know what you could do to truly support the podcast? And no, that's not leaving a rating and review. It's simply helping a friend. And that is helping a friend by sharing this episode with them if you think this would resonate with them and help them elevate their performance level, whether that's within themselves, their teams, or their organization. So do that. Help me, help a friend. Win-win all around. And hey, you look like a great friend at the same time. So just hit that little share button on your app and then feel free to fire this episode to anyone that you feel would benefit from it. Finally, there's always more. There's always more lessons around being the highest performing leader that you can possibly be, whether that's for yourself, your team, or your organization. So why don't you subscribe? Subscribe to the show via movingforwardleadership.com/subscribe. And until next time, lead, don't boss, and thanks for coming out. Take care now.